No, they're calling for players in the WNBA are calling for more money. They 9%, I believe. Accordingly, they get 9% of total revenue compared to roughly 50% of the revenue of NBA players. Should they be getting a larger share of the revenue in the WNBA?
Yes. I mean, I think the share isn't the right way to look at it because there's so much more revenue in the NBA. I think you should look at it in absolute numbers in terms of what they're making, and they are going to get a big increase in this cycle of collective bargaining.
For years, many people have viewed this league as resistant to serious financial investment. The belief was that its growth potential was limited, that its traditions were untouchable, and that moving too fast would somehow damage the product. That mindset now feels outdated, almost quaint, in light of what has just happened. A decision once considered unthinkable has been approved, and the numbers attached to it are so large they've been discussed in whispers rather than headlines. This wasn't gradual growth. This was disruption. And disruption has a way of exposing who was prepared for change and who was hiding behind caution. Those who spent years arguing for patience and restraint are suddenly looking for an exit strategy, because the ground shifted under their feet faster than they expected. The real issue isn't who got paid or how much money changed hands. That's surface-level noise. The more important question is who lost control of the narrative and why. Authority in this league has quietly changed hands, and it didn't happen through a vote or a press release. It happened because reality forced the issue, and once that kind of shift occurs, there's no going back. Everything moves differently from here on out.
Her, in the past, go on record and talk about money and her expectation and her hope that she makes enough money to build a house somewhere. The tone that she took had some people pessimistic about whether she would be returning to the Fever. But we can see from here that her mentality is not that she is going to be leaving. She is going to get plenty of money because of the nature of the CBA that is being negotiated. In the last CBA, she was making about a half max contract, just over.
For years, the WNBA worked hard to sell a picture of steady growth, long-term planning, and total control over its future. The message was clear. This league was stable, improving, and moving forward step by step. Fans, sponsors, and media partners were told to trust the process. Nothing was rushed, nothing was reckless, and nothing was out of control. But that image cracked the moment the league mishandled the one thing it absolutely could not afford to get wrong. A decision that once seemed unthinkable suddenly became reality, and it came with massive financial numbers that were once considered off-limits. Deals that were supposed to take decades happened almost overnight. Money that people whispered about like it was inappropriate is now front and center. Now the same voices that preached patience and slow growth are scrambling to explain how things shifted so quickly. The real issue isn't about who got paid or how much. It's about who lost control of the narrative and why. Authority slipped, leverage changed hands, and the balance of power moved in ways the league didn't fully prepare for. That's why this moment matters so much. It doesn't just challenge old assumptions. It rewrites the rules entirely. What once felt impossible is now the new reality, and there's no going back.
Big fumble of all fumbles is the WNBA fumbling this entire Caitlin Clark situation. It is absolutely a travesty and embarrassing. I didn't even see this Lexi Brown and Joy Taylor situation. I've posted plenty of things with Lexi Brown. Lexi Brown was one of the people that admitted Caitlin Clark was targeted by WNBA players. She admitted that there was a level of hostility toward Caitlin Clark that was not.
While the league was busy celebrating its own progress, the rest of the sports world was watching closely. What they saw wasn't a success story. It was a lesson in how to undervalue something rare. A once-in-a-generation asset was treated carefully, cautiously, almost timidly, as if its full potential might be risky to embrace. That hesitation created an opening, and eventually someone else stepped in. A competitor with deeper pockets, louder confidence, and far less patience showed up ready to act. No waiting, no second-guessing, just money on the table and belief in what they were buying. By the time she announced her decision, the shift had already happened. It wasn't just about a contract or a headline. It was a signal that the balance of power had changed. What was once taken for granted was now being actively pursued. And that's the real warning here. In modern sports, value doesn't disappear overnight. It moves, quietly at first, then all at once when someone else decides they won't make the same mistake.
That she was going pro, I immediately ran over to Lynn Dunn and said, "We have Elvis." She's like, "What?" I said, "There's been a lot of singers in music. There's only one Elvis. This is Elvis." And I knew, I've been in sports for 40 years. I knew this was something special. There's moving the needle. She's the needle. And I say it, there's been no one.
There's never been anyone like her before. For a long time, many people truly believed the system in place was already working just fine. They thought the league had enough star power, enough momentum, and enough goodwill to keep moving forward on its own. In that mindset, Caitlin Clark's role was simple. Smile, stay quiet, handle whatever came her way, and be thankful for the opportunity. That belief didn't age well. In fact, it collapsed almost immediately once reality set in. The idea that she should just blend in, endure the pressure, and not expect special treatment fell apart the moment her impact became impossible to ignore. She wasn't just another talented player fitting into an existing structure. She was changing the structure itself. What once sounded reasonable now looks outdated and careless. Like milk left outside on a blazing Phoenix sidewalk in the middle of July, that way of thinking spoiled fast. And once it did, there was no saving it. The league didn't just get a new star. It got a wake-up call.
She had Van Slugenhagen on her. She was like, "I'm offended that y'all have white defensive players guarding me," and she put her in the torture chamber. You should have known from her little face that she didn't want this matchup from the beginning. Caitlin reminds me of what Dame does. If anybody ever noticed, her first shot always a three. First quarter, second quarter, third. She sets the distance on her first shot, so you have to guard her there. Now she can do whatever she wants to do. She's playing a chess game. That's what Dame does. He starts his game off, he's gonna shoot a deep-ass 3 to 4.
When your biggest draw is taking constant physical punishment, traveling on commercial flights, and still carrying the entire relevance of your league on her shoulders, you're not building something sustainable. You're running a clearance sale and hoping nobody notices. Caitlin Clark didn't just arrive in the WNBA. She forced the league into conversations it had been chasing for decades. Arenas that once struggled to sell tickets started filling up every night. Games that needed excuses and explanations suddenly spoke for themselves through ratings alone. Merchandise sold so fast it caught executives off guard. Not because demand was surprising, but because the league system wasn't ready to handle it. She turned casual viewers into regular fans. She turned skeptics into people buying tickets. And she did all of it while earning a salary that wouldn't even cover parking at some NBA arenas. That disconnect is impossible to ignore. Then there's Sophie Cunningham, whose role in all of this has been badly misunderstood. A lot of people still believe professional sports are only about stats and box scores. They treat personality, visibility, and fan connection like side details that don't really matter. Sophie proves how wrong that thinking is. She brings toughness, confidence, and a presence that sparks conversation. People react to her. They talk about her. She creates engagement naturally, the kind leagues usually pay consultants millions to manufacture. Put Sophie Cunningham next to Caitlin Clark, and you don't just get talent. You get momentum. You get attention that feeds itself. You get a media engine that grows without being forced. That's not an accident. That's value. And it's exactly the kind of value this league can't afford to misunderstand again.
The pages, none of them dealt with the things that Caitlin had to deal with. And Lexi Brown admitted it. Now we have them. She makes it very clear. She's dealt with Nafisa Collier. She's been a teammate of hers. And these players, rather than getting a deal done, they are more focused on getting Kathy Engelberg fired. And this whole thing is backfiring on these players to the point where they couldn't even get a response from the owners.
Now the situation starts getting uncomfortable for the WNBA. Because while the league kept acting like everything was under control, Adam Silver wasn't looking away. He didn't need press conferences or dramatic statements. He just watched the numbers, followed the reactions, and recognized a pattern he's seen before. When leagues refuse to adapt, the market doesn't wait. It steps in and forces change, usually in a way that hurts. The league's responsibility was simple: protect the players who were driving its growth. Instead, it allowed tension and jealousy to pass as competitive basketball, and chaos to be framed as toughness. Caitlin Clark took hit after hit that looked less like defense and more like a message. The officiating didn't help. At times it felt inconsistent. At other times it felt indifferent. Fans noticed. Casual viewers noticed. And most importantly, investors noticed. When a product starts to look unstable, money looks for somewhere safer to go. And that safer option turned out to be very real, very organized, and very well funded. So when reports surfaced about contracts for Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham that made WNBA salaries look tiny by comparison, it wasn't shocking. It was inevitable. You can't hold down market value forever without consequences. What was surprising wasn't the size of the offers. It was how little resistance the league seemed able to put up once those numbers were out in the open. At that point, the leverage was already gone. The market had spoken, and it spoke louder than any statement the league could issue.
A single percentage more than that, she is going to be making at least $500,000 a year under the new CBA. She may be making more than that, depending on the CBA that they finally settle upon. But it's not going to be anything that she's not going to be able to fulfill all of her financial desires with. To say nothing of her participation in Project B, which is going to give her at least
$50 million doesn't negotiate with $76,000. It doesn't argue or compromise. It simply ignores it, gives a polite nod, and invites you to step up and join the journey. Adam Silver didn't have to do anything to crush the WNBA's negotiating leverage. He just let reality take its course. The NBA's system naturally protects its stars, shares revenue fairly, and maximizes exposure. Over time, it's learned that top talent will gravitate toward the places that treat them best. When a league allows its most valuable players to be undervalued, it sends a very clear signal. These players are available, and the world notices. Other organizations aren't approaching Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham out of kindness. They see opportunity. They see a league struggling to justify its own rules while asking its stars to sacrifice now for growth that always seems just out of reach. They see players whose names command global attention, but who work in conditions closer to a local minor league than a professional stage. For outside investors, that's not a problem. It's a chance. The WNBA tried to sell patience as a virtue, framing modest pay as temporary and the promise of future growth as enough. Meanwhile, competitors offered real, immediate value. Ownership stakes, private travel, international exposure, and financial security that lasts generations. One side asked for loyalty, the other offered opportunity. The contrast is stark. Tradition and history can only go so far when talent and opportunity are clearly on the table. And when the choice is between symbolic gestures and tangible rewards, smart players and smart investors always notice.
Commissioner Adam Silver, who appeared on the Today Show in New York earlier this week, speaking out.
So in an exclusive, anchor Craig Melvin asked the commissioner what he thought about players in the WNBA demanding more money and whether they should have a longer. Yes, they do deserve it. I mean, it is ridiculous.
Adam Silver's influence is subtle but powerful. He doesn't need to publicly attack the competition or make grand gestures. Instead, he ensures that his own system is strong, resilient, and attractive enough that talent naturally gravitates toward it. The WNBA, on the other hand, acted in ways that revealed its weaknesses: internal disagreements, inconsistent leadership, and a slow response to opportunities that could have sustained its recent momentum. When commentators like Stephen A. Smith raised concerns, it was easy for the league to dismiss them as noise. But in hindsight, he was pointing to a slow-motion unraveling. The moment athletes realize they have options beyond their current league, the power shifts. Loyalty is no longer automatic. Silence and inaction by management become leverage for outside organizations. Every day the WNBA delays addressing competing offers, it increases the perception of uncertainty. Every time Caitlin Clark travels for commercial deals while generating millions, it highlights that loyalty is being confused with obligation. Every lightly penalized foul or downplayed controversy adds another reason for players to consider leaving. The league is now faced with a harsh reality. It does not fully control its own future. It relied on Caitlin Clark's talent and popularity, assuming she would stay loyal and that players would accept limited compensation because that's how it's always been. That belief collapsed the moment external organizations showed they could build something entirely new and valuable. Adam Silver did not actively destroy the WNBA. Instead, He exposed its vulnerability by allowing market forces to work naturally. The league's illusion of invulnerability has been shattered, revealing a structure far more fragile than it or anyone had admitted.
Caitlin Clark, and everybody's excited. You got money. Now, here's the deal when it gets real interesting, and you start talking about money because you got the Kansas City Commission, right? And Adam Silver, you open up a can of worms is bigger than he could do, right? Because you got now a situation where the WNBA, okay, there's not going to be a 90% revenue.
A league that fails to protect its star athletes cannot expect their unconditional loyalty. If the system cannot fairly compensate its most valuable players, it should not feign surprise when they explore opportunities elsewhere. If the two biggest marketable names in women's basketball were to leave, the narrative around the league would instantly flip. The WNBA would no longer be seen as the ultimate destination for talent. It would appear as a stepping stone, a place players pass through on the way to bigger opportunities. Once this perception takes hold, it becomes nearly impossible to reverse. Sports leagues live or die based on the belief that they represent the pinnacle of their sport. Lose that belief and you lose influence over players, sponsors, and fans alike. The irony is sharp and almost cruel. After years of building attention, viewership, cultural relevance, and buzz, the WNBA treated its newfound success as a burden rather than a gift. Instead of embracing stardom and fully investing in its rising stars, it attempted to manage it cautiously, hesitantly, and sometimes clumsily. Meanwhile, competitors stepped in, offering the opportunities the WNBA neglected to prioritize. Caitlin Clark's departure isn't even required to make the point. Just the potential of her leaving has already shifted the landscape irrevocably. Sophie Cunningham's public statements and involvement further expose the structural weaknesses in how the league operates. Together, they represent a future the WNBA helped create, but seems unable to sustain. Adam Silver recognized this moment before anyone else. He didn't need to make speeches or announcements. The dismantling happened quietly through contrast, competence, and the uncomfortable truth that someone else is always willing to do what you refuse.
It ain't looking good for Caitlin Clark's 2026 season. Now, I know a lot of y'all been kind of mad about me saying these things I've been saying about the WNBA, which is fine. It's fine, the things I've been saying about Caitlin Clark hype. I just want to be transparent with y'all because when the fall come, it's going to hit hard for everybody. I just got to keep it real. You know, look, I will take one for the team, and that's what I've been doing in the WNBA genre because I've been putting y'all on.
The WNBA operated under the false assumption that it had all the time in the world. Leadership believed growth could be slow, deliberate, and tightly controlled. They assumed that systems could evolve at their pace, and that exceptional talent would patiently wait for the league to catch up. But the reality is far different. Elite athletes do not wait. They create opportunities, generate attention, and attract investment on their own timeline. And now those opportunities are no longer hypothetical. They are fully real, visible, and financially significant. The league's silence in response to these developments is telling. There is a subtle, unmistakable sense of alarm in the air. The organization that once assumed it controlled every variable is discovering that the rules have changed, and without its consent. Decisions being made now will determine far more than where Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham continue their careers. They will decide whether the WNBA maintains its position as the central hub of women's basketball, or becomes a case study in how to squander potential while celebrating short-term achievements. This is the point at which the problem is no longer theoretical or something that can be smoothed over with carefully worded press releases. Once athletes are presented with real alternatives, not minor development leagues or supplemental programs, but fully funded, globally marketed, star-centric operations, the balance of power permanently shifts. That bell cannot be unrung. You cannot pretend the market hasn't spoken when the message comes in eight-figure sums. What makes this worse is how predictable it all was. The warning signs were never subtle whispers. They were glaring neon signs. A rookie arrives and instantly becomes the main reason fans tune in, yet she is treated as a disruption instead of a vital asset. Another player brings charisma, a recognizable personal brand, and public influence. Yet the league is surprised when outside investors recognize that value immediately. This is not external sabotage, it is self-inflicted erosion, a collapse from within.
we need to do with our, you have son who plays basketball. I think there are things we need to do about youth development here. There are aspects of the international game, especially in terms of young players, boys and girls, that frankly is just better than what we're doing in the U.S. right now.
What'd you say?
$200,000
That's
a
a
year.
disgrace. Asia Wilson should be making $10 million a year.
Caitlin's making, she's still on her rookie contract,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's like
70 to 80,000.
I never knew this.
Yeah.
Indeed, Adam Silver's grasp of public perception is nearly unmatched in modern sports. He understands that leagues do not collapse because of a single mistake. They crumble when they cling stubbornly to outdated systems, refusing to acknowledge that the world around them has changed. The WNBA, in its effort to protect its existing structure, ironically exposed the fragility of that very system. Once fans, sponsors, and investors perceive vulnerability, capital shifts quickly, and player loyalty transforms from a given to a negotiable asset. The league now faces a precarious situation in which every decision seems reactive rather than commanding. A sudden increase in salaries could signal panic. Stricter player protections might be dismissed as damage control, and remaining silent communicates weakness. The window for proactive leadership quietly closed long ago, sometime between overlooked fouls and sold-out arenas that were misread as anomalies rather than clear proof of massive growth potential. Meanwhile, the idea that Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham could receive offers from other organizations no longer surprises anyone. It feels inevitable, like gravity running its course. When a system cannot keep pace with the value it generates, that value naturally seeks survival elsewhere. Elite athletes have short careers but enduring memories. They never forget who supported them when their influence mattered most. This is where the WNBA's deepest anxieties lie. If the absence of just two players can shake its foundation so profoundly, imagine the disruption that could occur as more athletes recognize their own market worth. Younger players observing this will quickly understand that the ceiling they were promised might not actually exist. The rules of loyalty, compensation, and recognition are being rewritten in real time, and the league must decide whether it will adapt or become a cautionary tale.
The Indiana Fever messed up her shot. Reason why she was hurt was because of them adding all that muscle. Y'all gotta go back and look, bruh. But it's cool. I take one for the team. Now, with that being said, I told y'all the funeral was coming. The WNBA might be over with, at least for the foreseeable future. That is because they want all this money that they do not have. And I hate to say this because I love Caitlin Clark so much. And for those of y'all always...
Consider the implications for the WNBA, as sponsors increasingly realize that their allegiance is tied not just to team logos, but to individual personalities. The influence of marquee players has reached a point where the marketable product is no longer the league itself. It is the athletes who populate it. This shift changes everything. The league risks not just losing its most valuable players, but also relinquishing control over its narrative, its story, and its cultural relevance. Adam Silver never had to launch a public attack on the WNBA. He didn't need to issue statements or make sweeping declarations. All he did was allow a comparison to emerge, subtle but devastatingly clear. Comparisons like these are merciless. On one side, you have organizations that are fully prepared, offering concrete benefits, generous contracts, global exposure, and meaningful respect for talent. On the other side, the WNBA has traditionally treated its players as interchangeable components of a rigid system, where the rules of tradition outweigh the opportunities presented by extraordinary talent. That fundamental difference alone can redirect billions of dollars in market value, influence contract negotiations, and alter the trajectory of the league itself. The consequences won't necessarily appear immediately. There won't be a single headline announcing the collapse of WNBA influence. Instead, the effects will creep in quietly, visible only to those paying close attention. Subtle shifts in contract language, travel arrangements that suddenly feel insufficient, or perks once considered standard now seeming inadequate. These are the markers of a system losing control. Silence will be chosen over transparency. By the time any official statements or announcements are made, the structural damage will already be irreversible. Paired with Caitlin Clark, the two create a self-reinforcing media spectacle, a combination of talent, personality, and cultural resonance that far exceeds the sum of their on-court accomplishments. The WNBA's discomfort stems from its own mismanagement. While it maintained a facade of control, market realities moved forward unimpeded. Adam Silver understood that control doesn't require direct interference. It only requires allowing a more robust, more prepared competitor to operate in contrast. When organizations fail to adapt, market forces intervene. Investors and sponsors recognize value where it exists, and athletes gravitate toward environments that respect and maximize their influence. This is why offers for Clark and Cunningham, totaling figures that dwarf existing WNBA salaries, were both inevitable and unsurprising. The league's failure was not an accident. It was a predictable consequence of underestimating the impact of its stars. Now the WNBA confronts a stark reality. A league that cannot protect its top talent cannot expect their unwavering loyalty. A system that undervalues its most marketable players cannot feign surprise when those players begin exploring alternatives. If Clark and Cunningham were to leave, the established narrative that the WNBA is the ultimate destination would collapse instantly. The league would no longer be seen as a pinnacle but as a stepping stone. Once such perceptions take hold, reversing them is nearly impossible. Leagues survive or perish based on the belief that they represent the apex of their sport. Lose that belief and you lose influence over players, sponsors, and fans alike. Ironically, the WNBA now has all the elements it long desired: attention, viewership, cultural prominence, and unprecedented buzz. Yet, it treated these achievements as obstacles, attempting to manage stardom instead of embracing it fully. The emergence of external offers, highly funded, globally marketed, and star-centric, illustrates what the league failed to do internally. Adam Silver recognized this moment intuitively. He did not need to speak. The dismantling of the WNBA's perceived monopoly occurred quietly, through contrasts, superior execution, and the simple demonstration that alternative opportunities existed. The league's prior assumption, that it could control growth incrementally and manage its stars at its own pace, has proven dangerously flawed. Exceptional talent doesn't wait for organizations to catch up. Now, alternative offers are real, visible, and substantial. The WNBA's silence in the face of these offers speaks volumes. The organization that once assumed it held all the cards is discovering that the deck has been reshuffled without its consent. The decisions ahead will not just determine where Clark and Cunningham play. They will determine whether the WNBA remains the central stage of women's basketball, or becomes a cautionary tale for future leagues, illustrating how potential is squandered while celebrating past accomplishments. What makes this crisis irreversible is the predictability of its emergence. The signs were not faint, they were glaring. A rookie arrives and instantly becomes the league's primary draw. Another player brings charisma, a marketable personality, and significant visibility. And yet, the league responds as though surprised when the market immediately assigns value. This isn't sabotage from the outside. It is a collapse born from neglect, a self-inflicted erosion.